Facebook at Henry's Home Horse and Human Sanctuary for more information.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
You're listening to the Cindy Cochran Show, and this is Cindy Cochran. Works out well that way, you know? Listen, so much happened this weekend. Richard, I don't know if you had a full weekend. I hope you didn't try and go on I-45. Did you at all? You must have read the memo. I never got the memo, didn't know what was going to happen. So I tell Samuel, we're going to go to the Museum of Natural Science. We're going to go by and pick up your cousin, and it's going to be so much fun. And we get on the road, and my son calls me and said, you may not want to be on 45 because there's a little backup there. Backup 4 hours. I was on 45, 4 hours with my 17-year-old grandson who thinks I do everything wrong anyway. So every time I try and get, move a little closer, he said, Grandma, you're going too fast. You're going too fast. You're going too close to those people. And I said, well, all these bullies are trying to come in on this lane and I'm just not having it. He said, that's not very Christian. You need to let them all come in. I said, the girl in front of me has let 8 cars in. I'm going with her. She's done enough. And so it was horrible. And finally, we got out of that, and I said, listen, I'm going to buy you the biggest steak you want. You want to go to Saltgrass? You want to go to Texas Roadhouse? So we stopped at Saltgrass and walked in, and I said, hi. And she said, there'll be a 45-minute wait. We both turned around and walked out, and not waiting anymore for anything. And it was just an adventure. And it wasn't a bonding. He could have killed me by the end of the thing. He says, I'm ready to jump out of this car. I can't stand it anymore. So that was one thing. And then Sunday, the preacher or the teacher that was in my class said, anybody have any prayers for anyone? And I said, anyone who got stuck on 45, didn't know about it, what was going on, I pray for them because I know they either lost their religion and maybe some got their religion after being there because you felt like you were in prison and there was no way out. You could not get out. So upset. And then I go into the worship service and the preacher goes, okay, everybody, we have a chance and we have an opportunity to really thank God. It's raining outside. And everybody just broke up in this uproarious, clapping and woohoo and all that. I'd never seen that before. It was pretty funny. But anyway, that's some of my weekend spent on the concrete on 45 and then in church. So it was, I had to pray for forgiveness of what I thought about all the people that were trying to get in. Anyway, so today, though, we have a very special guest. His name is, let's see, what was his name? Not Sandler. It was Sadler. Yeah, it was Kyle Sadler. No, Kyle Sadler, I've known him so long through my son, Chad, and we went over to his house one time, and I nearly drowned, and no one knew it. No one knew that I was drowning. I couldn't right myself and the float I was on up. So I was like stuck around me. I was too fat. And I couldn't, I went topsy-turvy, and I'm going, nobody knows, and they just think I'm playing, and I'm on the float. And I thought, how long can I hold my breath? But I finally ried myself back up, and everything was safe. So anyway, he's going to be with me. He's got so many subjects. We've got a plethora of things to talk about. And just because you call him a financial advisor, or what I like to say is a fiduciary. I just love that word, fiduciary. I'm going to make him explain it because it sounds like when you got mad at somebody, that's what you call him. But anyway, he's so smart. And I had this conversation with him, and we talked about so many different things, and that's what I think is going to happen. We're going to have a conversation, and you will be totally smarter by the time it's all over with. Okay, so here we go. Ready, get set, and Kyle Sadler, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on.
Man, it's just been like years since I've seen you, but I know what all you've been up to, and through chat. And Sam said to say hi, and so
Howdy, Sam.
he's watching. He watches most of them until he goes, "You're talking too much," and then he shuts down. But anyway, Kyle, let's start with where you live. Okay, explain to everybody that is not from Texas that when you live near a place called Cut and Shoot, you got some explaining to do.
Well, and it's so funny because we just built a house out there, and yes, when people say, "Well, where do you live?" I get to now say, "We live outside Cut and Shoot, Texas," and actually, there's so many different stories that circulate out there, and I know the number one question on everybody's mind: how in the world did a town get the name Cut and Shoot, Texas?
Sounds so violent.
Well, it's just Cut and Shoot, but it's in Texas, and it's one of the most popular places in Texas. And there's several different legends that go around it, but what it all ties back to is a church squabble was going on, and there's like 3 different versions of this church squabble that was going on, and but what the whole meaning that came about was a little boy got very fed up, and this is 1920s lingo, and the boy just got fed up with all the squabbling, and he just blurted out in front of everybody, "I'm gonna cut around the corner and shoot through the bushes. I'm out of here."
Cut around the corner and shoot through the bushes. I like that.
And it just came about that people were giggling over it, that it actually brought the community closer together because they were all laughing together. And from that point forward, it was called Cut and Shoot.
I
so
love that.
it is a legitimate town, but we live outside of Cut and Shoot, Texas. And there are 2 notables for Cut and Shoot. Roy Harris was a boxer back in, I want to say, the 50s, 60s, and they always had a boxing training in Cut and Shoot. And then Miss America 1983, and I don't recall her name, came from Cut and Shoot, Texas. So,
Oh, that's pretty good.
of 1,000 people population, there's
Yeah.
only that. But for those that are like frantically looking for Cut and Shoot, it's outside of Conroe. So
That's right.
it's a nice little easy drive outside of Conroe, Texas.
I love that because, I mean, just to be able to say that, and there's a story behind it. I love history like that. And it wasn't some councilman said, "Well, I want to call it Cut." And they go, "Well, we can't have just Cut. Let's say Shoot." "Yeah, that's right. I'll shoot you if you cut me." Okay. So it was there. It wasn't there, though, that you've learned all of your skills of wealth and how you become like the Midas man, right? And I had to look that up. I wanted to make sure that's the guy that everything he touched turned to gold. And so because I hadn't heard that story in so long, but I just thought of you whenever you talk to me and all the things you do help people do. I think that's wonderful. And I'd like to, finding out that you were an avid Elvis fan, knowing that today is the anniversary of his passing, and so a lot of people, they've had this Elvis week down in Memphis, and it is crazy, everyone says. And on Thursday, I have one of his last girlfriends, Mindy Miller. She's going to be on, and she was there, and she talks about her stories with Elvis and all that stuff. And they're all good stories and nice and uplifting stories and inspirational. And so she's going to be there to talk about what happened during that week. They say it's just people come from everywhere to be there. And since you were an avid Elvis fan and the movie's out and you've seen the movie, did you like the movie?
Oh, absolutely love the movie. And it's kind of funny that we're talking about Elvis because, before we got started, I was like, oh, so today's like Elvis's 35th anniversary of his death. You corrected me and said, no, 45th. And it's kind of like whenever I see the post on Facebook about our high school reunion, and I have to correct everybody that I'm not that old. Okay, I only graduated high school maybe 10 years ago. We can't be having a 30th anniversary. Well, actually, we've already passed the 30th class reunion.
You better go.
So,
This will be the best they ever look.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot less hair than there was 30 years ago. But the funny part is, as far as like, and I'm very flattered that you say the minus man, because that knowledge is gained. And saw this great sign. We're eating at the Ranch Hand Cafe. I mean, this is purely Texas now. We're having a pure Texas conversation.
Your conversation is
cut and
so
shoot.
thick, I'm going to have to start interpreting.
Yeah. We're on radio, but you're going to have subtitles on there. My cousins over in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, never understood why they needed subtitles. And I'm like, me having a conversation with you, I need subtitles. But
that's true.
Anyhow, so we're eating at the Ranch Hand Cafe, and they have these great little signs, and it's over in Cleveland. If anybody ever, Cleveland, Texas, that is, if anybody's ever in that area, and they have all these little signs, and it says, a wise person started from a young, stupid one.
That's so true.
And we all start out young and dumb, and, it just takes years of experience. And then, so whenever we were having a conversation the other day and we're talking about Elvis or we're talking about investments, we just got into this conversation, and it's like, that's just what we've learned over these years, and how we've learned it, how I've learned finance is because I'll tell you, whenever I started in public accounting, the CPA that owned the firm gave me a pencil, paper, and a calculator, said, this is how we learned accounting. This is how you're going to learn accounting.
Oh, really?
So, yes, School of Hard Knocks is one of the best schools you can ever go to. So,
well, I think what's interesting is that I asked Kyle. I said, "Okay, so it's 1955, and you're an accountant. You're a fiduciary." And Elvis Presley calls one day and says, "I got to have your help, Kyle. I just need your help because I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. I'm losing everything," because it's true that he had the feeling that any day it was all going to stop. And so he was trying to spend like there was no tomorrow. And that's really how he spent, and why he bought the Cadillacs and why he did all that stuff, because that was the feeling he had. But what would you do differently than what you saw being done to him?
Well, a lot of times, number one is like Colonel Tom did. It took advantage of ignorance, and that happens a lot. I mean, we see it in all sorts of celebrities. We saw it back in 1955. We see it in 2023. Whenever we have celebrities that come into money, when we have individuals that come into a windfall, win the lottery, win a lawsuit, somebody's there sticking their hand out. And so what ends up happening is I've experienced this. I've handled some lottery winners. I've handled those that have come into a windfall from lawsuits. And I've also got to handle individuals that are just like you and I, and they come into an inheritance. So Elvis's situation is not actually different than a lot of other people's situation. What ends up happening is most entertainers, and going back to my glory days back in high school and college, I was a musician back then. And the one thing about being a musician is most people that are in celebrity status, they come from humble means. They come from working class families. They come from families that, in a lot of celebrity situations, they'll sit here and say that their parents gave everything for them to make it where they are. So their parents never taught them how to budget. Their parents never taught them about contracts. Their parents never spoke to them about anything that dealt with how to control the finances and have it continue for the rest of your life. And actually, one of the things that I was telling you about my YouTube channel, where I talk about what to do when you win the lottery, is that creating a team. Well, see, the first thing Elvis should have done is create his team, and that's an attorney, an accountant, and a financial professional. Whether it's a CFP or someone else with a financial designation that's in their corner that understands, hey, we need to do some budgeting. But see, it's not just someone like Elvis that's all of a sudden coming in a contract, because he didn't have that windfall. He built up, and all of a sudden it was one Cadillac. Oh, he needed to get multiple Cadillacs.
Right.
He needed multiple things to put his money into outlets. And unfortunately, a lot of them were depreciable assets, or assets that will sit here and wither away over
Right.
time in Amarillo, the upside down Cadillacs on Route 66. But so what ended up happening is he needed that control. And, you had mentioned about church. I use this example a lot. King Solomon rose to power because he sought counsel. He lost power whenever he thought he could do it all on his own. That's what happens to a lot of us out there. And whenever I've noticed that the people that go into a windfall or come into a windfall, they'll lose it just as fast. Interesting celebrity that spent money. She was all in the news. Her
Britney
conservatorship
Spears.
is now over. That's right. You got it. Britney Spears. And I want to say that it was like 15, 20 years ago, there was a statistic that came out that she was spending like $187,000 a day or something like that. And I meant to look that up because, that was on the top of my mind. That's
That
why I
sounds
knew
about
that
right,
it was going to be coming up on here. But she was going through money so quick. That's where part of that conservatorship came in, because somebody needed to control her. Now it's gone. I'm afraid that something that's going to happen to Elvis is going to repeat and happen to Britney, because my personal opinion is that history does repeat itself, and it's only us that can sit here and stop that history from repeating.
Well, I am obsessed with HGTV, and they have this the Dream Lottery House thing, and so I watch that, and I want to throw things at the TV because I'm going like, "What are you thinking?" Now, I have no business ever telling anybody or saying anything about, oh, you should save money and you shouldn't spend that much. But what happens is they go on there and they've won $1 million. So the guy that's interviewing them, and he's going to do the looking for their house, says, so how much do you want to spend? And they say, $500,000. And they said, okay, so tell me what you want in this house. Now, there's 500 of this million's now gone. And they want a pool, they want land, they want, because they're going to buy a car, they're going to buy all these things. And you realize they may have 1 month in that house, and that's going to be about it because of how much. And then he'll jack them up on the price, and he'll say, well, all the things you want, you're going to have to spend a little bit more. So you're millionaires now. And he calls them millionaires. They got $1 million. That means nothing now. And so they say, okay, well, let's go to $700,000. Now they have $300,000 that they're going to have to spend. And he never says normally, unless the couple looks like he better give them some counsel, because they only won $100,000 and they want to buy a $500,000 home, and they want to put that $100,000 down, even though they were living paycheck to paycheck. Now, it's so sad, but you see the mentality of why people are going to lose it all real quick, because they feel like, well, I'll just put this in the bank and it'll keep, it'll compound and all that, and I'm going to have all this money from putting the money in the bank or savings. And so, and that usually doesn't happen because you've got to take care. The maintenance on those houses are just horrible. So anyway, I think that you see that in a lot of these celebrities that go in and buy these, and that they were a one-hit wonder. And now what are they going to do? They're going to be waiting on the tables at Denny's. And so it's so sad, and they don't get this counsel. But I guess sports celebrities are the same way. They go in there and make millions and millions, and then what happens to them? But if they had someone, and I don't know why the football league doesn't offer this as part of the service.
Well, actually, and there is, unfortunately, I have a little bit of insight on that and what ends up happening because I am friends with several former athletes, and they're quick to say part of it has to do with more protection from the players' union that sits here and says, "Hey, these agents that they're getting. I mean, the agents are really what Colonel Tom did to Elvis." It's still happening in sports today. Okay, we can kind of open up the scab from the Carlos Beltran whenever he left to go to the Mets. Okay, we were offering, the Astros were offering net over net. We were offering higher than what Carlos was going to make up in New York, but he chose to go to New York. Now, maybe he wanted those Mets pinstripes better than he wanted the Astros, but we did give him a World Series, so don't know about that.
Hello.
But maybe it was the pinstripes that were calling. Maybe it wasn't the $13 million that was calling, that he never did the math and said, wait a second, I have to pay state income taxes in New York.
That's what I was going to say.
For half of the games, because half of the games are home. Because what happens is what a lot of people don't know is whenever athletes travel and they perform, and that's same as musicians, and they perform in another state, they owe state income tax. Actually, that's why Shakira is in trouble in Spain or Portugal, whichever one. I get it confused. But she's in trouble over there because she lived there supposedly for more than 6 months, so therefore she owes those, for those taxes, and that's what the battle is all about, is what's residency. So if he would have stayed here in Houston, well, his agent, not calling out the agent's name, but they are based in Houston. They are not subject to state income tax. And so it was always our theory that, hey, they don't have to make pay the state income tax. He does. He would have got net would have been better off staying here in Houston. So a lot of times that's whenever you got to seek counsel. So who's your counsel? Do they have a vested interest? And that's very interesting. You kept rolling the tongue, fiduciary. Yes, that's a new term that we were all designed and given recently, is that fiduciary. And that is that we're working because we have a license. Now we are legally and ethically required to work in every client's best interest. And I mean, some of it has gotten really extreme, where if a person asks me a question out on the golf course, I'm supposed to pull out a disclosure form, and I'm like, whoa, we've gone a little too far here, that I have to start handing out disclosures whenever I speak. But fiduciary is stating that now we have a legal liability that we will work in the best interest of our clients.
And that you don't make a profit off of anything. It has to be the client has to win as well for you to be able to win. It's like causing the win-win situation.
Let's not confuse that we're not allowed to make a profit, because every business is out there to make a profit. But what happens is whenever we make that recommendation, it has to be, I'm thinking of Cindy Cochran's best interest, and that Cindy Cochran is going to be profiting this. And then, by the way,
that's what that's great. I mean,
and also I have to disclose that profit to you, which is very interesting, because I've always said, why can't we walk in? What would happen if we walked into any other business in the United States and said, hey, what's your profit margin? They're going to sit here and say, there's the door, buddy.
I say, I'm going to buy this $45 steak. Tell me how much you're making off of it. I understand that, and especially now because everything's so expensive, we become very, skeptical about why they're spending so much. Did you just start asking for more money because everybody else is? Is this just like a, peer pressure.
Yeah, the common argument right now is, wow, gas prices are fast to go up with oil, but slow to come down because oil prices have come down roughly 20-25% since the height,
Right.
but yet gas prices are still hanging up there. But again, it's that long term that we have to look at. Now, one other thing that I was going to mention, going back to like the Elvis and Carlos and athletes, a lot of what happens like on HGTV is people will make those short-term decisions without understanding the long-term consequences. That's one of my little catchphrases out there, that we make all these short-term decisions and not even worry about that long-term consequence. Well, when you win that $1 million, well, first off, what are the tax implications behind it?
Right.
And then what's going to be, you just bought a $600,000 house. Now, here in Texas, we have no state income tax,
Right.
but we have high property taxes, or higher than normal property taxes. Whereas in another state, you may have a higher state income tax and a lower property tax, but the commonality is you're going to have the property tax. So if you were living paycheck to paycheck, and there's a lot of people that will win the lottery and they go out and they buy a dream home and they're like, well, I'm not going to quit my job, but are you going to be able to afford that property tax going forward? And so that's why, we have to kind of look at the here and now, and then the proximal future and the distant future.
Right. Well, I think that, in being an older person now, I'm over 70, the scams that happen, it seems, and the scams that we encounter, I got to tell you, I got a text on my phone, and it said, we have frozen your account, and we need more information on you. So if you will text us this information, like open up this email and then text me information. And I went, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like what they would do. So I took my phone with the text on it. I haven't touched anything. I didn't want anything to touch it by accident because I felt like it was a scam. And I took it into the lady and I said, okay, did you send me this? Did Chase send me this? And they went, no, that's a scam. Don't touch anything. Just hand me your phone like this. Okay. And then she went, and then she said, okay, that's gone. But here's how you're going to have to do it. If you get anything like that again from us, we will call you. And then we'll leave it. We'll leave a number as well. It's only a 3-number deal. Then it's coming from us. If it has like not 911, but like 011, it'll be from us. So I was like, okay, that's great. But I know these things happen and you're so stupid and you go like, my account's frozen. What do you mean my account's frozen? So that's scary.
Right. But one of the things you said is you feel like you're stupid. Okay. And here's the whole thing. People that get hit with these scams, we're getting hit with these scams. Nobody is stupid. And here's the reason why. That's all these scammers do all day long is they sit around and think about how they're going to take your money. So they're going to figure out where your weakness is, what your weakness is, and they're going after it. It's not because of stupidity. You don't sit around all day trying to figure out how to get out of scams, but they sit around and try to figure out how they're going to get these scams. And unfortunately, I've kind of become this quasi-expert on scams, and the reason being is that I
don't think you ought to put it that way. How to prevent the scam.
Yeah, quasi-expert on how to prevent the scam.
Yes.
Yes, not on being the scammer, but how to prevent the scam. And, the thing is, and the reason being that I say that is I've had several clients that are older, and I've seen a lot of people and done, quite a bit of research on these scams. So first off, the context that it falls under. So I had one client that got scammed out of, I want to say it was like $76,000. Okay. And you go, wow, how does that happen? It's like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. Okay. So what ends up happening is it started out in no money down. And this was we'll buy your timeshare back from you. We have a buyer for your timeshare. So sell us your timeshare and we'll sell it to somebody. Oh, it's not going to cost you anything. We're going to pay you. Had one client, she was out $76,000. Had another client that she called me to say, hey, I finally found somebody that wants to buy my timeshare. And I was like, wait, explain it to me. And she started explaining. I say, no, that's a scam. No, I don't have to give them any money. No, they're going to come up with a reason why you need to send money. And they always come up with the reason why they send money. Well, I warned her. She ended up losing about $6,000 from that deal. Got another call that came in from a client, and they fell for the IRS you owe us money scam. And so, go buy Home Depot cards. And they went and bought $4,000 worth of Home Depot cards. But
wait, what? The IRS agent says, go buy these cards?
Yes, they got that anonymous phone call that says, hey, you owe us money, and the only way to do it is to go to Home Depot and buy it. Okay, so it happens. But it's all these different scams, but you sit here and you go, I would never fall for that. I mean, there are people on the phone going, oh my gosh, he just said it's not stupidity. It's not. It's honestly not. It's finding out where somebody's weakness is, and here's the reason why. The Prince of Nigeria scam. I believe they caught the biggest portion of that ring. Now, Prince of Nigeria scam has been going on since the 20s.
Is this the diamond thing?
No, this is, I'm the Prince of Nigeria. I have $12 million that I need to move to the United States. I'll gladly pay you half, whatever. That email that used to circulate before we had social media. Mm-hmm. And everybody that's listening is sitting here going, oh, I would never fall for that one. $62 million just from that crew was stolen because people sat here and said, I would never fall for that. Here's how they catch you. First off, you sit here and they send you the email, I am the Prince of Nigeria, and I will gladly give you $500,000 or half the $12 million, whatever. And you decide you're going to respond to him and say, this is a scam, leave me alone. They just know that, number one, Cindy Cochran has a live email. Mm-hmm. Number two, Cindy Cochran reads that email and is responsive. The challenge is on. So now you have now connected in this network. And I promise you, they talk about the dark net and all this kind of stuff. No, there are lists. Whenever you fall for a scam, you're put on a list and it circulates. It's an honor amongst thieves that they circulate it. I mean, part of this is coming from an FBI agent that we had a conversation with on one of our monthly calls. And you just get put on and you're going to get hit up by different scams. So you didn't fall for the Prince of Nigeria, but they know that your email is now active. They see now that your phone is active because you said, take me off your list. Or you replied, stop. You replied, do not call. Whatever. You just now gave them a live number. See, the greatest thing that you can do is just delete. Don't let them have the information that this is an active telephone number. Don't let them know that this is an email that's read. And that is the biggest way of arming yourself, is that you don't respond to this. When somebody calls, okay, and you don't recognize the number, I hate to say this these days,
right?
Don't answer it.
Well, here's the most horrific thing that's been going around is that they send you a text saying that a relative of yours, that they have the name of the relative, has been killed in a car wreck, and you need to call this number. And you're mortified. And you're going like, oh no. And so I thought, wait. So I go to that person's, Facebook page, and they say, if you get a thing, I'm not dead. I am still here. I'm not dead. I don't know who's doing this, but it's horrible because they've had so many people get scared, and they start, and of course they're going to respond to that. That was, I mean, it was kind of brilliant on their part, because they got a way to make you respond emotionally, like, oh no, and I got to find out about this, what happened. So know that is a scam. Go to some other source that you are confident in calling and find out, have you heard, was Beverly was she killed in a car wreck? You know, it's horrible.
And, you know, scams have been around, I mean, from the dawn of man. Greed has always been there. You know, as the infamous Gordon Gekko said in the movie Wall Street, you know, greed, for lack of a better definition, is good. So, you know, people have always been greedy. And, you know, whether it's money, power, whatever. And so whenever you're getting this, and you're getting it from an anonymous source, the bottom line is check your source. It's just like anything else. You mentioned Facebook, social media. How did they know that my brother? How did they know my son? How did they know any of this? Because you have data information. And that's what's going on, is that not only we're speaking out against corporations that are listening in on our phones, we're speaking out on, you know, they're tracking with the tracking cookies as we're online. But the whole thing is that the bad sources are who's buying that information. And you don't realize, you know, Facebook is not going out there trying to sell. I honestly don't believe Mark Zuckerberg is selling criminals information unknowingly. But an employee that gathers that information, an employee at, let me pick on ExxonMobil, okay? Let me pick on AIG, any of these companies. It's the employee that sits here and says, well, I'm making $40,000 a year. And I just got this offer. If I supply, you know, a client list or a contact list or anything, they're going to pay me $20,000. And most likely that's a scam. And, you know, how do you report to the cops that you just got scammed because you gave somebody all of this data breach? So a lot of this is they've been building this information, and now they know that who my mother is, and they know who my sisters are, and they know my contact information, and they can get to those heartfelt. But the bottom line is what number did this come from? What email address? And that's another key thing is when you get that Chase email, or you get that, and I don't even bank at Chase, and I get that email all the time, and it's that my account's been breached. I'm like, oh my gosh, my Chase account got breached. I better go open one. You know? Go breach it.
They say, you know, they'll say you've been, I don't know what they call it, about someone's trying to get into your account
you've
like
been
19
hacked
times, and that we've prevented that. You know, we've prevented them coming in there, and I go like, okay, thank you, but I don't know what that means. Did they see anything? Is there anything that they've seen?
You know, it depends, and it's like whenever we have the on the federal level, those breaches, you know, those will end up happening. I mean, again, these are people that sit around all day long.
Right.
All they do is dream up ways of taking your money. We actually had a gentleman that came out and spoke one of our conferences, and he was a 4-star general. I forgot what all his title was, but he was under Obama's administration and national security. And he's like, yeah, the general public doesn't need to know how much that it gets, how many attacks are happening. Just my website that I used to have, a proprietary website that I had, I mean, we would count somewhere in the ballpark of 800 to 1,000 attacks a month. From all over the world. And there wasn't any cash that was exchanged on the website. It was a trading website. So there was nothing that they could really take, but they're going to sit here and try to attack it just to get that data so that they can pass along, and they have these data files, and then they sell it to the scammers, and the scammers are going to go out there and come after you. But it's the common sense. One of the advisors I was speaking to today, and I know she's listening now because they were saying, "Oh, we're gonna see and make sure." Would she say, if it costs nothing, or oh gosh, Lindsay, I'm so sorry. If it's free, then it's going to have to cost something.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And the bottom line
true.
thing is, or if it's too good to be true, then it's
Yes.
not going to be free. That's it.
Very good.
Okay. So, the bottom line to it is, if my mom were to hear, Kyle's been kidnapped, number one, she's going to kind of think twice on trying to pay the ransom, probably.
See, if we all get so skeptical that we can't even do that, that's what's bad, is that you have the trust factor is kind of dwindling because different things that come up. And number one, but this is like number two, really, is the IRS is now hiring 87,000 new IRS agents. And with 6-month experience, or 6 months of training, they'll put you in the position of going after, and everybody's laughing at this when the administration says, we're only going after 400,000 and up. Nobody under 400,000 is going to be touched. And everybody, laughs at that. They don't believe it. And so many people have come out and said, don't believe that. So they're going to have these IRS agents. And one of the qualifications in this application they put out said that you will be armed and you will have to be able to protect or to try and use deadly force. Maybe if you have to be willing to do that. I bet NRA must have just sent so many thank you notes to them for all the guns that they're going to have to buy, 87,000, and arm them and put them out there with a 6-month training period. That's on the IRS part of it, not the how to handle the gun or anything like that. So are they going to be qualified to handle a gun? And then they took it down because it got leaked. And it was, they put it up, and it was, I don't know, Post or somebody leaked it. And I mean, they jumped all over that. You're going to give everybody that's an IRS agent a gun so that they can make sure they get what we owe. I was speechless. I couldn't believe it. Can you believe that?
Well, okay. So it's one of those things, like, first off, IRS Code Section 1 of the Internal Revenue Code. My background, I was in public accounting, and so I was in tax accounting for my early part of my career before I made the transition over. And IRS Code Section 1 says that we're under a tax system that is voluntary. Now, I challenge anybody to volunteer not to to turn in their tax returns every year and volunteer not to pay their taxes and see what happens. But, it was one of those things that we always joked around about, because when we walked into class, that was the first thing that we would talk about in tax class, is that it is voluntary, but volunteer not to do it and see what happens. Now, the next part is, and here's the hard part on jumping on that bill right now, is that of all of our congressional leaders, president on down to any of the elected officials in Washington, I have yet to hear of any of them that has actually read the 800-page bill that has come out from front to finish.
That's happened before, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We had Congressman Brady that brought that up
Yeah.
back when Affordable Care Act came out, and he showed the bill and was like, has anybody read this? So, and basically to kind of put it in perspective, it's only 2 J.K. Rowling books thick. So it's only 2 Harry Potter books thick. So, if it was my kids reading Harry Potter, they'd probably finish it in about a week. But with that, part of it is the clarification that that $80 million is going to upgrades, which IRS definitely needs upgrades. They need, because we have to deal with them. If anybody's dealt with them, they are very archaic when it comes to computer systems. But the arming of an IRS agent. Now, part of that is they are law enforcement officers, and when it comes time to take somebody's property, and Texas, we're a stand your ground state.
Right.
Sometimes it goes a little bit too far, and they do need to have some kind of defense. Not saying that they need it. Now,
But the
why
agent has 6 months training.
But here's the more frightening part behind it. So we're going to get 87,000 more agents within 6 months. They're going to need supervisors. Where are we getting those supervisors from? So they're going to be accelerating people. And how do we choose who the supervisors are? See, what we had with the IRS system in the past is really it's kind of a point system. We always get on police departments for having ticket quotas. Well, when it came down to, and from my experience in public accounting, a lot of times what it was coming down to is it was an agent just trying to prove themselves so they could move up out of the field office into a higher role. Trust me, when we were sitting there, we had agents coming in the office to do audits. They were probably put into the back corner, given the very minimal conditions. Accounting firms don't put them in the nice air-conditioned room. They put them in the closet and say, here, you sweat it out, and then you can leave offices. But now I can only imagine. I mean, that was 20-plus years ago, that now it's probably more document-driven than anything.
So
But
the IRS, you're saying the IRS can come to your home if you have not paid your taxes to take your home?
Well, there's a process, and that's where these scams come in, and that's the relating back to the scams. Number one, you're going to get a letter from the IRS that says
they will not call you.
You will not get called by the IRS.
So if that's what they start with, hang up because they don't call you.
If I could get an IRS agent to call me, I would love it, because I have so many client questions that whenever I get on the phone to call, people ask, what do I do for a living? And I always respond, I sit on hold for a living. Mm-hmm. Okay. If I could get somebody from the IRS to call me, I would love it, because I wouldn't have to sit on hold waiting for the IRS to answer a question.
Well, my sister is a CPA, and so I was driving in Dallas, and I get a call, and couldn't understand who it was. I said, hello, and they said, is this Cindy Cochran? Yes. This is the IRS, and I lost the feeling between my knees and I was trying to keep the pedal down, and I'm going like, why aren't they calling me? And what have I done wrong? And I'll surrender, whatever. And so I called my sister immediately, and she said, that was not the IRS.
They
don't call you.
I mean, of anybody out there, any agency. I mean, a good friend of mine is a sheriff's deputy, and I was doing a flip house, and it just happened to be in his area where his station was. So he thought he would come by and have a little fun with me and play a little joke and get on his loudspeaker and say, come out with your hands up. And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And I'm walking out. I'm like, man, I fell for it. Okay, that's not as heart-stopping as when you get that letter that has the Internal Revenue or Department of Treasury on it.
Right.
Oh, that will make your guts fall out.
It's not a refund.
Yeah,
normally.
Yeah. They don't send letters to say thank you. But the thing is with the IRS, and here's what I've learned over the years: when it came down to audits, first off, if you're a W-2 employee and you get and you file a 1040 EZ, I mean, people can sit here and try to scare you all you want. I mean, you're not the one that the IRS cares about, because you're only having withholding coming out of your check. Okay, you file a 1040 EZ, you're getting a W-2. You're not the ones that they're concerned about. What they're concerned about is the individuals that may have a household income of $150,000, and they go, let's see, I donated $50,000 worth of things to Habitat for Humanity or to Goodwill, because we all know Goodwill and Habitat doesn't write down the actual value. We have to write down the value. So I'm going to say, yeah, that chest of drawers was $1,000 thrift store value. No, it's not. That's who the IRS is coming after. The mileage log, they love mileage log.
Yes.
Okay, and that's one of the easiest things to keep up with.
Sure.
So for a business owner, a salesperson to sit here and not keep a mileage log, the IRS is going to say, hey, let us see your mileage log. Well, if you're sitting here and just making up miles, and you're like, yeah, I'm a local sales. And if you write that on, local sales representative, but you're logging 40,000 miles a year on your tax return, they're going to say, that's just out of the norm for a local salesperson.
Kyle,
So,
I'm having to hold my feet up because I've kind of done that before. Like, because I don't remember, how many miles this is. And I could look and GPS it. to
and
see how
that's the
many
problem
miles.
these days
I
is
have
now
no
we have
receipts.
technology.
I have no receipts, and you start talking about you've got to have receipts.
Remember, this is
Cindy.
a recorded conversation, Cindy.
Yes. Oh, that's right. I don't do it anymore. I go nowhere, and I don't travel. No, but I just would write down what I thought, probably
Right.
was the mileage.
It's called reasonable estimates.
Yes.
And, reasonable estimates, you would have to talk to an attorney or a tax professional if that's allowable. In some cases, it is allowable to sit here and say reasonable estimate. There's not a way. But now with GPS technology, all that at your hand, those auditors are going to sit here and go, well, how is it reasonable to not know how far it is from the Conroe Tower to downtown Houston, to the, Chase building downtown, since we're talking about Chase. Okay. No, we can look it up and we can say, here's the mileage. And that was the mileage that we drove for the day. We don't have to look at the speedometer. But the whole thing is whenever we get this fear that, an IRS agent is coming after us, it's not so much. I mean, and, going back to, what I had always sat here and told people is like, well, if we just went to a national consumption tax, we wouldn't have to worry about doing a tax return because it is difficult. It's challenging.
It's so complicated. And that's why I loved Kevin Brady when he said, okay, we need to get what people have to fill out to send in for their taxes. We just need to have a
Index
postcard.
card.
And that's about all we need to have. And I want to try and get him on before he graduates.
Oh man,
before he
he's a
retires.
fabulous guy.
And I love him, and it was such a great idea. And then COVID and everything we kind of lost sight of it. I want to find out what happened to the postcard, but we've only got like 4 minutes left, and I probably really messed up.
Where'd the time go?
Oh, it was so fast. I love talking to you. Kyle has 2 books out. 2. I'm Retired, Now What?
Bestseller on Amazon. I
you
beat
go
out
to
Dick Van
Amazon.
Dyke.
You did?
Yeah, for 2 weeks in a row in my category.
Wow.
So for the rest of my life, I get to say best-selling author on Amazon.
Now, Amazon.
A little marketing goes a long way.
I'm telling you, and then this one, the Retirement Shift. This is in its 2nd printing, and so
Well, come November, it'll be second printing. If you buy it now, you'll get to see the issues with it, the printing issues.
I would never know if it had any kind of grammatical error. But anyway, so those books are amazing, and I'm so excited that you were with us, and we've learned a lot. There's so much we could talk about. I mean, we could go on because I had gotten down to scams, and then we were going to talk about. I think there was one other thing we were going to talk about, but I love.
Sounds like you need to have me come back.
I think we just might have to do that.
But
if you
at
don't
least,
mind.
yeah, well, but at least Bob Smiley's out there, if he is still awake, saying, at least my job is safe because he doesn't have to worry about some other guy coming over and taking his job.
Well, he knows that there's nothing funnier than paying taxes, and so this is he would love to come and probably spar with you about things that you said. But I love it. I love that there's people like you out there. And Kyle, president of Precept Wealth Management, and if they want to get a hold of you, we have, you can put it on my Facebook if you need to, and that's where a lot of people go to find out what's going on and what's going to happen, or yours, of course, your YouTube. You're going to be on YouTube.
Well, we're all
immediately.
over the place.
Yeah. Every form. Yeah, you're right.
Hey, if you're in business, you have to be on socials.
But do
okay?
you do TikTok?
I do not do TikTok. My kids do TikTok.
Yes.
Okay. I am. My demographic is way too old for TikTok.
They won't be doing that. Okay. All right. Well, so tomorrow we've got Jimmy the C. Cirillo. You know Joey.
Jimmy C.
and you know Joey Cirillo, and
Yep.
and so Jimmy the C is going to be here, and we're going to talk sports, and he loves sports, and it's going to be fun to talk to him, and so I'm just so appreciative that you've come and that you've poured out so much of your knowledge, and we will have you back for show. So you guys be back tomorrow, and we're going to talk sports, and it's probably a different angle than normal. Okay, all right, you're listening to the Cindy Cochran Show, and we'll be right back up recorded on YouTube. So be sure to look for that. Thank you so much. Y'all take care, and first responders, we love you.